Hello, hello, hello. Look, we're just gonna jump right into it. We gotta talk about this podcast, and this video in itself is gonna serve as somewhat of like a podcasty type of vibes. If you want to put this on in the background while you're doing something, that would be very much beneficial. I'm gonna go ahead and just go through this real quick before we get into the actual podcast itself. I've been posting re-edits and just better balanced versions of my 2022 Barney reviews, Barney and Friends seasons 1, 2, and then everything else after that. So if you haven't seen those and would like to see those in a better version that's easier for you to listen to, check them out. They're under the Reimagine title. They'll be linked in the description as well. So I think it'll be really fun for people who haven't seen those and for those who just want to experience them again, as it's been a little bit of a while since I put those up. So those will be in the description. Check them out. So we need to talk about this Generation Barney. This is a podcast series that just started dropping on November 12th, and it's dropping a new episode every Tuesday. It's going to be a, I believe, 7-part series, and they have 2 episodes out right now. It's a series talking about Barney and like the rise of Barney from the early 90s, Barney and Friends specifically, and what made the show great. Now, one really, really cool thing is that this podcast is being run by Connecticut Public Television, who were the people that launched Barney on television back in 1992, with Barney and Friends season 1. So already you have the people that know the most about Barney. And I think that's the best thing about this podcast, bar none, because you get a lot of people that will interview and like do documentary type things on a show or a character, and they can do research, but like they don't really have a connection to what they're talking about, and a lot of their questions end up being very surface level. From the moment the first episode starts on this series, immediately you're like, this is going to be amazing. Someone that's been a Barney friend for over 20 years, myself, I just knew, because the first episode starts with them talking about Barney live in New York City, and it's so intricate. I believe the host's name is Sabrina Herrera, and she grew up with Barney. So like, it's not just some person coming into the office and talking about something for a podcast or reading a script. Like, she actually has experience and she knows what she's talking about. She brings up specific episode titles. She brings up specific actors, people behind the scenes, and it's so cozy. It's such a well-produced podcast series, and I listen to podcasts all the time, when I'm doing work or washing dishes, going on a walk, like. So I feel like I feel like I'm a connoisseur when it comes to things like this. And it's just such a nice, warm, cozy listen. Now, there is one thing that I kind of wish was done a little bit differently, and I've seen a lot of other people mentioning this as well. I really feel like this should have been a visual documentary, as in something that you would see as kind of like a film, something on Netflix, Peacock, because like I said, it is so well produced. It's very well put together. The music is like nice and fun. The sound effects are great, and the script is amazing. There are things in these episodes, in these 2 that have dropped so far, where you're listening and you're just like, we know Barney live in New York City, right? For example, we've seen it. We know the audio. We know what everything looks like, the stage and everything. So when you hear the audio from that and you hear the host talking about it, you're like, oh, I see that. But for someone that's not really engrossed with Barney or hasn't seen this home video or doesn't know anything about it, you hear the audio and like, you're kind of trying to picture what's going on, and you can't, outside of just hearing people screaming and all kinds of stuff. So I really feel like we could have benefited from a visual version of this podcast. Maybe there wasn't the funds to do it. Maybe this is just the route that they decided to do instead. I don't know. But, I think of things like the I Love You, You Hate Me documentary that came out on Peacock a couple years ago. Was it last year? Maybe it was a couple years. I don't remember. It was one of those one of those years. And, it's a very divisive documentary within the Barney fan community. You either really like it or you like it a little bit, but they didn't have to do this, that, and the third, or you don't like it at all. I'm somewhere in the middle where I think it was really well put together. I feel like it should not have had a gimmick, being that, Barney has never really had a documentary tailored towards him that is, at the very least, widely accessible. and the brand just started to relaunch. And when we got this documentary, it was nice because I feel like a lot of us thought it was going to be about the production and the behind the scenes and the rise of Barney. And to an extent, it was in the beginning. And then the entire rest of like the last 3/4 of the movie was just about the hate that Barney accumulated and why it was hated and why that. And like, that's fine for a documentary, but for something like Barney, where he's never really had something that delves into what brought him to fame and the things that went on behind the scenes, like, I feel like in a way we kind of got robbed a little bit. And this isn't to put down the documentary, because I think, again, it was very well put together. I just feel like at that time, a documentary that was about the base and just everything about Barney, as opposed to having a gimmick put towards the film, would have been very much beneficial. This podcast series feels like what I feel like we should have gotten a couple years ago. I like, genuinely, I played the first episode twice. Like, it was so nice because, again, they're not just saying, like, talking about surface level stuff. They're giving you, the backyard gang. They're giving you why Barney's voice was deep. They're giving you the fact that Barney and Friends would not have happened if it wasn't for someone with a production company and their daughter or granddaughter going to a video store and getting a day at the beach and playing it over and over and over again. And the guy being like, oh, well, maybe we should do something with this, and reaching out to Cheryl Leach. And like, they even talk about why Backyard Gang, that title, wasn't brought into Barney and Friends, because that naming, is not too friendly, or wasn't back then. So like, it's very intricate. I love the little details that they get into. They even talk about how Barney wasn't originally a dinosaur; he was a teddy bear, and then he went to a sea serpent. I love how we're getting this now. Despite the fact that Barney's World is happening and the promotion, whatever marketing is going on with that, I don't know what's going on with that. But we're still getting classic Barney stuff that's not from Mattel. It's people outside of Mattel that are doing these really amazing things and keeping Barney's history alive. And it's so heartwarming. My favorite episode so far, and again, there's only 2 episodes at the time of this recording. They're dropping new ones every Tuesday. My favorite episode is the second one. It's called Dino Sync, and it's entirely focused on Bob West and David Joyner. Now, we know, we haven't really seen Bob and David Joyner interact at all, the past, like, decades, really. So, rumors fly around, this, that, and the third, whatever. It's so amazing hearing them talking about each other and giving each other accolades. The entire episode, they're talking about their connection and how they work together, David Joyner being the body actor, Bob West being the voice, and how they had to train together, and they got so in sync that they didn't need to use hand gestures anymore. They automatically knew what they were going to do. And it's so cool. It's so cool. It gets into like their history together. And when Bob said how at one point people were talking about their connection and how they would say that with Barney, David Joyner was the soul of Barney and Bob was the heart. Like, that almost gave me chills, because it's true. And I've always said they were the heart and soul of Barney. They were, in my opinion, the most integral pieces of Barney's rise, because they did so much together and they're so synonymous. Like, whenever you think of Barney, you immediately think of the Barney from the 90s, the voice and the specific actions of David Joyner. And just hearing them talk about, and again, they're not in the same room, right? They're recorded at different times. But like, just hearing them give each other praises, I loved a lot. We hear Bob talking about David Joyner and how amazing he was on his live streams. Anytime David Joyner talks about Bob, he talks about how amazing the voice is and his great work ethic. And hearing them put together back to back was something that I feel like I needed personally, because they are my childhood. And I just wanted to hear that at least once, you know what I mean? This series, again, is supposed to have 7 episodes, and it's got a lot of different people that's supposed to be on it. We've already said Bob West and David Joyner. They had Danielle Vega on the first episode, I believe. They're getting people like Andrew Olson, Kieran from Mr. K's Clubhouse is going to be in it. Just really nice, like, wonderful people. And we don't know the titles of the rest of the episodes just yet, I don't think. But this is one of my favorite podcasts I've listened to in a long time, genuinely, because I've wanted something like this for Barney for so long. And again, I wish it was visual. I wish we had visuals, especially for things like episode 2, where they're talking about the body acting of Barney. Like, that would have been so nice to see. However, in its current state, I think it is absolutely amazing. There's been articles thrown around talking about things in the second episode. It's good or bad. It's getting promotion, so that's great. It's going to be in the description. Go check it out. I highly recommend listening to it. It's just such a nice, cozy listen. You're gonna learn things you hadn't known before that might be on the Barney wiki now. I don't know, but please just give it a look. It's amazing, amazing, amazing by CPTV. I don't know what else to say. So that's my initial overview of this series. I know it's gonna go and soar even higher heights from here. And I hope you guys are able to check it out. It's on all major streaming services, I believe. It's definitely on Apple Podcasts. I listen to that a lot. It's also on YouTube. So if you don't use any of those audio services, at least check it out on YouTube. It's like the full episodes are already there. So give that a look. As always, make sure to subscribe. Leave a like on this video if you enjoyed it. Let me know what you guys thought of these episodes in the comments. And as always, thank you so much for boarding my rainbow line. I'll see you guys at the next stop. See you. Gogeta Super, Brandon, Helen, Emilia, Amanda, Austin, Chaco, Daniel, Ian, Julia, Luke, Matthew, Quirky Girl.